Thanks for coming. Nice to see a big crowd. Can you do roll call
Mr. Silva,
here?
Mr. Guy,
Yeah.
Ms. McGowan. Here. Mr. Edwards.
Here.
Mr. Winterhalter,
Here.
Mr. Weiner, and Mr. Evans had previously indicated they would not be here this evening.
So the next step, any comments from the board on the agenda before we get going?
No.
Oh. Okay, we'll do a moment of silence and then we'll do the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Is there any public comment on the agenda? Okay. First item, we have the.
We got one.
Oh, can you name and address and organization? Make sure the microphone's on, please. Yeah.
Should be good.
Okay, now it's great. I'm not sure if this is the appropriate time to comment now or later. My name is Cindy Mahalo, 87 Hunters Run, Vice Chair of the EAC. And I'm just following up on the comment letter that the EAC provided, which I hope you had an opportunity to review. This comment letter was based
Yeah,
on.
we'll do that after their
Later.
presentation.
Okay, great.
Thank you. We'll see you in a bit. Next up, we have minutes from the January 26th meeting. Do we have any comments on those? Or a motion to approve?
No comments. Mr. Chairman, I'll move to approve the minutes from January the 26th, 2023.
We have a second?
Second.
All in favor of approving the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. And then first up, Stoney Knoll.
My name is Hugh Gate. I work for Stantec, as you know. Here representing the land development project, subdivision project going on in Valley Lane. This is the one. Oh, green, of course. Sorry about that. So there is the last time we were before Township in May, before this planning commission in May of 2022, you guys gave us recommendation for approval for an 18-lot residential subdivision. We went on to the Board of Supervisors on the June 27th, and they gave us a conditional approval, conditional on NPDS permits and things of that nature. We're coming here before with a revised plan. What I'll do is I'll highlight what was revised, and then I'll kind of remind everybody of what stayed the same on this plan.
You said it was 18 lots last time?
13 lots.
That's what I thought. Okay, I misheard.
18 lots this time.
Yeah.
So obviously if we could take the plan to page 3. Perfect, thank you. So as I said, we originally came in here with 13 lots. So the biggest change obviously is we're going from 13 lots to 18 lots. The one difference on the houses is the lot at the corner of Hunt Valley Lane and Wayland where we weren't developing, we're now putting a house on there. The second big thing we're doing is so there was some discussion last time about bringing a water main down from White Horse Road at 2,500 feet down the road to our intersection and bring it across. That was requested by Fire Marshal Carpine. We had a couple of conversations with both the Planning Commission and with the Board of Supervisors And we now agree to do that, and that is reflected in the plans, bringing that 8-inch main down from my horse. The second thing about this plan is that before we just had boxes, because we were really too sure what type of houses were going to go here. We put a little bit more details now. So we have a better idea of what type of house is going to be constructed here. And the same thing with some of the driveways. Some of the driveways show roofs, some of them show circular. That's all going to be picked by the people who built the houses, but we figured we would show options of what the site's going to look like. And that, members of the planning commission, is about all we've changed. One more thing, we shrunk the length of the road by about 200 feet. Just to kind of fit the houses on the cul-de-sac a little bit easier. The right of way remains the same, 65 feet wide, 32-foot wide roads, 2 swales, sidewalk on one side and street trees. The road will remain private, maintained by the HOA. If you could advance it, I believe 3 more slides. Sorry, 1 more. The other important thing I want to mention here is that the perimeter management basically stayed the same. The same design, basins are in the same location, swales are in the same location as what was reviewed multiple times in front of the planning commission and the supervisors. So nothing really changed there. There is 4 waivers that we originally requested and we received. One was maximum length of a cul-de-sac exceeding 700 feet. The maximum number of lots on the road. We were asking to use plastic pipe as opposed to concrete pipe. And there was a partial waiver to only have half of the road have sidewalk on it as opposed to the other one. All those were reviewed and both recommended approval by this planning commission and was approved by the board of supervisors. That's all I really have to present here, because as I said, the plan doesn't change dramatically at all, other than the number of lots. That if you notice, the road is in the same location as it was previously. And the basins are the same thing. And there were the 2 big things that we spent a lot of time talking about.
Did you see Andy note about possible variance on the cul-de-sac?
Yes, I did. And and this is going to have to probably be an interpretation, but there's a section in the ordinance, or in the zoning, section 172.1110. It's called irregular lot frontages. And it says the board of supervisors of the township may, at the time of approving the subdivision, specify that the lot frontages on such lot will be measured at the building setback as established at the minimum front yard required by the underlying zoning district. So I don't know how to interpret this. It doesn't sound like it's a waiver. I think it's just a request for time. And what it does is basically the frontage just becomes the building line because of the unusual nature of putting lots on cul-de-sacs and not being able to get 175-foot full frontage around that.
I have to say, I don't know how that the board of supervisors would override that actual specific zoning requirement in R1 that speaks to street frontage and the definition that's provided. So I think that may be an interpretation issue with our township solicitor. So he could provide further guidance on that.
And you said setback, are you talking about? I'm not sure exactly, 10 feet back from the curb or the house it's on?
Or the house. Setback from the curb of the house is typically a setback.
Right.
For what they call a regular lot frontage, which means trying to get around the cul-de-sac, instead of trying to measure it on the cul-de-sac, what you do is you push it back to where the lot frontage is and say where the building faces, you have to have at least 175 foot width.
And the problem, the definition that I used was lot frontage in the beginning section of the chapter. It speaks to the distance along the street line. So it seems to me there's somewhat of a conflict that I think our solicitor should weigh in on.
How far back is the projected house off of the 175? Is it 68 or is it 15?
Oh, no, it's, I apologize for not having it. I probably shouldn't have that. Can you go to, excuse me, can you go to, actually go back 2 slides. I think that'll show, yeah, right there. I know the frontage or the width of the lot and all those, 3 lots of 8, 9, and 10 are over 175. So, you obviously have 75 feet on lot number 8. On lot number 9, you probably have a good 100 to 200 feet off of the cul-de-sac. And you're within, 75, feet off the cul-de-sac for lot number 10.
So lot number 10 is your big problem.
No, actually, I think, lot number 9 is, the one in the middle, 8, 9, and 10. There's 8 on the top of the cul-de-sac. It would be 9. That is the trickiest one because that one has the smallest lot dimension along the cul-de-sac. And that's what we're talking about.
Do you need a variance for that or anything for lot 9?
I don't, that's just it. I don't know, but we were going, the language in the ordinance says at the time of approval, the board of supervisors may approve this. That didn't sound like a zoning variance to me, but like Andy said, I would just, see what the township solicitor says as far as interpretation.
It also may be helpful if you could add those dimensions on the plan in the next.
Yeah, as per your note, yeah, we will do that.
So late this afternoon, we got a letter from Herb McCombie about the sewer connection issues. Did you receive that letter?
I don't believe I did.
Okay, I got it at 4 o'clock. So it talked about, it talked about that you needed 5,000 or 4,050 GPDs for the 18 lots.
Right.
And it looks like there was a reserve of 25,000 for the Melmark School. And because they're only going to use 19.8, there's 5,200 available. And apparently it's presumed that you're going to try and use the 4,000 out of 5,200. Is that correct? I guess if you didn't see the letter, it's not sure.
Sorry, I didn't.
Well, then I'll defer until you get a chance to see the letter.
Thank you.
And that letter, just for clarification for the planning commission, that letter is similar to the previous capacity certification letter that I had written with regard to the 13 lot subdivision. The residual flow from the Melmark School that's left over that they're not going to be using by agreement with the authority can be assigned to this project, which was recommended in my previous letter. They still have to go through sewage planning and have the DEP agree upon that, but the DEP just wants to see that there's capacity available in the authority system and where that capacity is coming from to support the development.
So your letter indicates that the sewage goes from here to the township site and then over to what was called the Ashford station.
Yes.
Where is that located?
That is in so the Lissitor community used to be called the Ashford.
Ashford, original
Yes.
development.
So there's a pump station on that site that handles our Newtown Hunt pump station, our Goshen Road pump station. They both pump into the Ashford Lissitor pump station, and then that in turn pumps out to the CDCA system.
Which is in Marple Township.
Correct. Yes.
It must be a pretty powerful pump.
Yes, it is.
Is that above ground or below ground?
Those are submersible pumps. So there's a building that houses the mechanicals and the emergency generator, the wet well, and the pumps are below ground.
What happens if it gets overloaded?
If it gets overloaded, so the pump is a redundant system. There's 2 pumps. The design of the system has to be such that one pump can handle the permitted capacity for that pump station and actually the hydraulic capacity for that pump station. So if in the event one pump fails, the other pump can theoretically handle everything going there. So yeah, I mean, it can handle a lot of flow.
So we're good then.
Yes.
So this is assuming that Melmark will no longer need reserved PDUs, correct?
That's correct. Yes, and they've signed an agreement with the authority to that effect. They purchased their requisite amount of EDUs that they need, which is the 19,000 and change. So that residual flow is in the authority's coffers to reassign.
Have you seen Carl Keene's letter, I assume, January 30th?
Yes.
Any, do you have any issues with that?
The only issue we're gonna have a conversation with him with is, he was asking that in addition to extending the water main all the way down from White Horse to our subdivision. He asked if we can extend the 8-inch another 500 feet just to provide service to the lot 18. We think there's alternatives, extending that another 545 feet is gonna be very expensive for one lot. And there's an existing water line in Hunt Valley Lane that we can connect through there, that would be a lot easier. So we just want to have that conversation with them. with that
And
option.
you'll work that out one way or another.
You mentioned that the increase of number of lots from 13 to 18 did not significantly change the the stormwater management and all that. Now, lot 18 is a new lot, right, that you didn't have before. So how are you handling that one?
That will be, because that lot is lower elevation wise than the other three bases, we're gonna actually handle it on lot. There's gonna be a small low depth basin, if you will, on the lot itself. It's gonna be more like a rain garden, actually.
For that particular.
That lot, oh, yes.
Now, lot 18, is it wetland that it has on well, the front of it?
Yes, it is wetlands in the front of it.
So, okay, so on one hand, you're going to cross the wetland or not?
No, we are avoiding crossing the wetlands whatsoever. We're bringing the driveway out on.
From the main road. Okay. Have you done the wetland study already?
We've done a wetland study previously, and perhaps the township didn't get it the last time, but DEP asked us to confirm it, and we had someone go out there with, and we have a letter. I don't know if we sent a letter the last time, but it's a letter from the wetland that was saying he verifies that the wetland as shown on the plan is current and up to date and accurate today. And I can provide that to the township.
And then there's, that it was mentioned, so we have a memo from the EAC, the Environmental Advisory Council. Andy, can I just kind of walk through so we get a handle on sort of what our code is and you know, what their comments are before we start? Do we have a wetlands survey on this? I mean, I see wetlands marked on the
No,
plan.
so that's what he's saying.
I believe Mr. Gate reference, I don't know that we physically have that study. But if Mr. Gate can provide that, that would be certainly helpful.
Yeah.
Do we require it?
We require, well, we require certain buffers in that area to be protected by all means.
Okay. And then, we've got that. And then on the trees, and we'll kind of get, I'm just trying to. So our arborist discusses 212 trees. And they were of the opinion that the number was 298.
Correct.
And 212, I'm just,
So we do have a tree replacement formula that's provided in the shade tree ordinance. It was adopted, I believe, in 2020. I believe Mr. Hochbach, who's the township arborist, had suggested that additional clarity be provided and additional trees be included in the next revision to meet this requirement. But I think he also alluded to the fact that there's other alternatives. So at this point in time, I think the object is to try to get as close to this tree replacement policy as possible.
and I guess that, so. The 212, is that sort of a soft number as we stand now, or is that number we think?
Based upon his review, that's a hard.
Okay, that's what I'm just trying
That's
to,
a hard one. So I believe that the landscaping plan or the tree removal plan identifies the specific trees that they're taking down with the caliper. And he applied the tree replacement formula to that and came up with that 219 number.
So since he's not meeting that number, then he has the alternative of paying in lieu, etc.
Well, he alluded to that in his review letter, that there were some other options available.
Right.
And if I may, the last time we ran into this problem last time, with, even with 13 lot, there was, there was a certain amount of replacement trees and we struggled to find places. So they wanted them along the street line and we didn't have enough, for the street. So I talked to, Doc back a couple of times and we worked out an agreement on planting a couple additional trees and possibly setting up an escrow. I recognize with the new plan, we're gonna have that conversation all over again, and that is fine.
So is there property outside the area of the housing development? It looks like there's 3 other lots or 2 other lots. Do I read that correctly?
No, all the new lots are within our property line. It's all one big.
But are there other lots that the property owner, the developer owns that are not being developed?
Correct. If north on the plan, as a matter of fact, there's a portion of the lot that's being developed, that's being subdivided off of.
Is that the area that's like 3.89 acres?
Yeah.
Okay. And then there's something next to lot 9. That's 5.4 acres.
Right there, you can stop right there. Yeah, that'll show you, the shaded area is part of the, currently part of the land that's being developed, which is south. And we're gonna take that area, we're gonna, deed it to the north area, and then only develop the south area. But that's why there'll be a subdivision component, to this application.
And what about the big lot east of lot number, what is it?
That 9,
9.
that's the 5.41.
There is also the one near lot 10.
I think that's a retention basin.
Yes,
That's the
that is-
retention basin at the end
Okay,
of
yeah,
the,
I'm looking,
at the end of the line.
okay,
That's the retention basin?
Right there.
Okay.
So
so it's on a separate lot.
Oh,
Yeah, both the retention basins are going to be what's, kind of like an open space remainder of the property that was subdivided for the.
So will that be controlled by the HOA?
Sure, yes.
and there'll be no development on it. It'll be just retention basins on each of those 2,
Yes,
as it was before.
yes,
And the same spreaders, that whole discussion of,
no.
no?
no.
Oh, not all the
Actually,
same.
I forgot to tell you that. If you could, go to, let's see, what I'd go, 4 more sheets. Keep going. 1 more should go. Okay. So
What number
we
is
talked about,
133.
is this sheet
See more.
10?
Down the bottom.
so.
This was the
if-
original plan, wasn't it?
Yeah, but there was like a horizontal
Yeah, and it was like spread out.
distribution.
Yeah.
So, as we talked about, and when we got the approval on the 13th, the idea was we were gonna take both of those lots, combine them into one pipe system. And then take them down to the stream and create something like a 200-foot long level spreader to have the water come out. DEP would not allow us to do that. They would not allow us to do that.
What did they say about it?
They basically said that, the distance and the slope was not conducive for a level spreader. And they thought it was a better idea to have a direct discharge on a singular pipe to the stream. So what we did is where it was kind of lower in the lower right-hand corner, the level spreader was, we pushed it up further, closer to the stream. And we ended up with a pretty big, rock dissipator. And that's what we're kind of stuck with now. Now, we have resubmitted this back to DEP and they will most likely have comments. But we had several conversations with them. I was under the impression that a level spreader was a lot better than a direct stream discharge, but they said because of the slopes, they would not let me do it.
What kind of permits do they require from you for that?
What sort of what?
For the stream discharge, what kind of permits do they require from you?
Permits? Oh, it's just a standard GP permit. And it's kind of usually incorporated in the entire MDS application.
Any other changes we should?
Sorry about that. I was thinking that too.
It's all the same, but.
No, I don't believe I missed anything at this point. I do want to remind both the commissioner and anybody who is here from the previous one is that we designed these basins pretty much intercept all the water that's coming down into their properties and redirect it away from them. That was one of the main considerations. We had plenty of residents here at one point worried about the water coming down the hill now. We pretty much diverted most of that into the basins and into the stream. So they should not have any issues with water.
From the existing condition now to after development.
Yes.
Other than detention, do you also provide infiltration?
Yes, the basins have the basins have been tested for infiltration. They have a certain rate that was included in the calculation that are in the stormwater capital.
Is there any public comment? Like, name and address, please.
Brad Rich, 357, Echo Valley Lane. I think what I heard there was the distribution of the water that's coming from the basin down over the hill into the tributary or whatever it's called. And that is just now a single discharge pipe?
Correct.
Is that what you're saying? And is that, that's represented by the
dark
spot there?
Yes.
And is there any way to see what's like where my lot is in relation to where that is? Or where the street is, the street is, that comes down?
That's Echo Valley. Back is the subdivision near the discharge, or the back of the last one, Echo Valley.
Go to chart 141, C 141.
Well, that,
Oh, actually.
Yep, back up.
Yeah, that's the biggest plan we have that shows,
Okay.
Which one's your property?
so I'm on the corner here, Echo Valley and the spur. So it looks like it's upstream. I thought it was down closer to the corner. Looks like it's moved upstream a little ways. Is it moved?
yes.
It has moved. Okay, so I'm not totally off. Okay, so it's basically upstream of my lot, and then we'll see it going by. Okay, and is that gonna be like high volume coming down out of there? Is it restricted in any way?
Well, yeah, that's what the basins do. The basins restrict the amount of water that's allowed to come out of it. So it's not as, well, let's put it this way, it's less water that's coming down there now. But that's our criteria. We can't increase the runoff, and that was.
Yeah, it's less water overall,
Yes,
but it's all coming out in one location.
yes.
Okay, and I just wonder what that volume is, and if that is restricted or, you know, the
Base
velocity
restricted.
is coming.
Both the velocity is restricted because we're not allowed, we have to reduce the velocity before we enter it into.
I would think, yeah, so there are provisions for that.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, no, I just seem to have moved, and I just want to thank you. Thanks for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming out. Name and address, please.
My name is Carl Francis. I live at 2411 Whaling Road, directly across, I think, from the new Post Road. I just have some questions, some clarification, if I may. I'm curious about what we're going to see if we are, I wish I had a pointer, but where the road comes in, I'd like to know where that falls in relation to the homes across the street now. Is it directly in line with one? Is it between them? Is it down in the sort of the quiet area where it's on the driveways? I'm just curious. I can't get a picture of it from.
C 121 would give you a pretty good view.
$2411 Wayland.
Where is the entrance?
In front of 2411 Wayland.
Oh, well, looks like it, yes. Okay, now I'm curious about why it was positioned there. That all the lights, all the traffic, everything will shine right in our windows. And I'm curious about why that road needs to be right there.
I mean, it's a design feature to the layout.
There's several reasons for laying it out. There's requirements for lot width along the road. That sets our first dimension, if you will.
Okay.
Okay, and then, the whole width of the entire parcel is a certain dimension. So we have to kind of bisect that to make sure that we have enough lot width and depth to meet the minimum amount of square footage required, which in this case is 50,000. It's just a geometrical alignment that worked the best for, this.
Okay.
And I will say that, on the landscape plan, you'll see that almost the entire length, there is going to be a, landscape berm there. With assorted trees and shades and,
Could you describe that a bit for us? For instance, we've lived there for 20 years and as you drive down White Horse Road and you get to Wayland, it's beautifully bermed and planted. Can we expect something similar to that?
yes, it's the White Horse Development that's up the street. You know, like you said, there's a berm there and there's trees, that was just a model.
Okay, now we have, our houses are all set, have a setback, an average setback of about 200 feet from the roads. Will that be the case for your houses?
There is a side yard setback that the houses will be set back. I believe the side yard setback is a combination of, I want to say 85 feet, so my guess is we're gonna be 40 feet from the right of way, and the right of way is probably another 20 feet to the road, so you're looking at the houses being a good 60 feet away from the edge of the road. And like, you'll see the berm in the landscape.
Okay, so when any of us drive up and down the street and others, that they're gonna have on our side, on Wayland side, you're gonna have about 200 feet and a large front yard, and we're gonna see houses 65 feet, thirds of distance up against the road. Is that correct?
Yeah, and that complies with zoning.
And I would note that, I believe you're in Easttown Township,
Yes.
so you have different zoning and different requirements than we have.
Of course.
And Heather, if you can just note that it was the Easttown, and we don't mind you commenting, but we do want to note that you're not.
Right. Okay. Well, if that's a factor, tell me and I'll sit down.
No,
We want to hear this.
no, I'm fine, just, for our records, just.
Okay. Am I understanding this right, that there's a good deal of open space at the back of the property?
Yes.
Okay. Would it be improper for me to ask why some of that open space couldn't be put in the front on the street to balance it out, to make it look more like a community on both sides, on two different places?
Well, first of all, the main reason why most of the open space is in the back is it's existing wooded, and we are trying to avoid disturbing very little of that. So I think we take down very little trees other than the basin itself, preserve that woodlands, and it's steeper slope on there, so developing on steeper slope is that much more. And in some cases prohibited by the township.
Okay. On the subject of water, will this new community draw any groundwater? Are there any wells or anything like that?
No, it's public water.
Okay, good. And let's see. Now, we have had for a long time a number of speeding points on Wayland Road. The traffic, there's plenty of traffic, but that's not the issue. It's speeding, because we have in that stretch from where at the corner, at the corner at the top of this, and all the way down, there's about 3/4 of a mile that is straight and it's level and it's a wonderful place to speed. It is just couldn't be better on the way home, the way out from work late at night. A lot of them come from Walmart, and the speeding is remarkable. And I wondered if there's been any consideration, or will be any consideration, anything related to perhaps traffic calming to help keep that speed No,
I think that's a trifecta for an East Town road. That's who would have to, yeah, East Town would have to address that. I think our township borders the on the road, and the entire road is an East Town road, is that correct? But
I don't know that.
Chat, yeah.
I think that might be an East Town road, so that would be entirely the East Town police supervisors, commissioners.
okay, all right. Is there? Yes. Oh, forgive me, this is my wife Kathy.
I think you can understand that we're distressed that we have this project right across the street from us, and it's going to all be going and coming right in front of our house. And I do know that when we attended a previous meeting, we were reassured that wasn't going to happen, that we were going to have the entrance down across from that lovely horse field, where it wouldn't have disturbed anybody. I mean, originally, it was sort of where the property owner's entrance is right now.
I think it's always looked like this. It's always been this parcel, and they've always had houses on both sides, so maybe it moved a little bit up or down, but the configuration has generally been the same since we've started talking about this.
And would it be fair, there are 3 ribbons attached along the road to some shrubs or something. And I've been wondering what they indicate. Is that where the road's going?
Yeah, I believe that was a preliminary survey to show the location of the road.
All right, so my last question is, how long would your estimate be that this project would be under construction? It would be sold and built?
I'll be honest with you, I don't think I can predict that. The market will predict how long this is gonna go long, better than I certainly could predict.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Name and address, please.
Show the number of the slide. At the applicant. Showing the southern row. And then behind it. Water runoff.
Can you turn the mic?
Bingo, better, okay, thank you. Perfect. That, right, that's it. This.
I think 131.
Rather than have the ask one. That area? Yes, there, I think there we are. Questions? Some of this. Elucidated. This isn't much a question, but much like my understanding. We have the basin over here, we have the basin far right, and this here is, well. This is the swell, right? No. Where you just put your pen, if you go to the right, that's the swell that drags the water all the way over to the basin on the right. You go a little bit higher from where you originally, a little bit higher on there. Yes. That, a little bit higher, that is the berm and the swell that takes that water to the basin on the left-hand side. On the left-hand side. Okay, now, if you're waiting, could I see the slide that shows how far to the left this goes? That's it, you're looking at Wayland Avenue right there. There's the whole thing right there. Oh, could you go up, please? Yeah, okay, so what I'm trying to capture is just Hunt Valley, the homes here along Hunt Valley circle that would be affected by the runoff. Current runoff. Pardon me? By the current runoff. You're saying there won't be any in the future? No, what I'm saying is, you're saying there's a problem with water, and I'm like. Yeah, there is, and that's one of the things. And those two, one that goes to the right and the one that goes to the left. Yes. Intercept all, I'm not gonna say all, but most of the water that comes down on those properties and direct them away from those properties. Yes. Yes, yeah, but I think you have a slide that shows the area to the south of this, so it captures the backyard of those homes along Hunt Valley Circle. That would be the best slide right there. That's an overall grading plan. And you can see Hunt Valley Lane is there. Oh, okay, I see. No, that's-
The houses are there, you
No, I got
just,
it.
yeah, they're lighter.
So,
If you zoom in, you can see.
I wish I were 6'5". This borough extends to here.
Can you zoom in on that?
And the piping, if I may call it that, extends that far as well. Yeah, you take water to the basin. Yes. Right. And then, okay, and then there is this gap, so to speak, right here, okay? So what goes up like this, berm comes in like this berm goes in like this. I don't really understand the contour of the land there, but is that the reason the contour of the land? I mean, why is that not a consecutive? It's basically gravity. If we were to push that berm onto the left, down to the property line, we would have to go uphill and then downhill to get to that basin on the left-hand side. So we picked it uphill, so we get enough gravity to get it down there. That's why it's offset. I see, I got it. Okay, so, I mean, obviously, my concern would be low in the gap between the two berms. Well, the gaps kind of overlap. So the only thing that should get through there is just the gap between the left-hand swale and the bottom of the property line. Okay, great. On the increased density, just so I got this. You got this one home tucked away down there at the border of Wayland and Valley Lane, and then you're essentially putting 2 more houses in on each side. Roughly, yes. May I ask why the change? Well, I asked by the commission to make this the first question. I will say that construction costs, infrastructure costs are going very high. So you have a certain amount of lots. Cover the infrastructure costs. Okay. That is a consideration. It's not the only factor, but it's a consideration of why we do it. Okay, well, thank you very much. Thank you to the commission. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Name and address, please.
Name is Liv Rose, 359 Echo Valley. So on one of the charts somewhere there, I saw something. There is between my house and Brad's house at 357. There's this little stub road off of Echo Valley that kind of looks up to the hillside. And on one of a couple of pages there, I have a couple questions there. It looked like they were going to install some water bars. I don't know what a water bar is.
A water board, I'm not too sure if that's where we stand, but a water board is a temporary measure during construction. So where it's coming down, it will not be there permanently.
There's no construction on that subject.
Well, where the water bars are, there's a line, there's a sanitary sewer line, a two inch or I think at this point it's a 3-inch line.
Which already exists.
No, it does not. It's a separate one. We had to do our own line to connect into the manhole on Echo Valley. We couldn't tap into the existing no question sanitary sewer.
So you're digging up and then you're going to repair the road?
Yes. Yes. And it will be the contractor's option if you can do it directional drilling, which means you don't rip up the road and do it over.
You might want to talk to Joe or whoever did it. There's a lot of rock there.
Okay, well, like I said, we usually leave that to the
Yeah, that was a very difficult time, if I recall, right at that top of that hill. So there was another place I saw you were gonna connect the water main to Echo Valley, also through there.
No, it's not going that far. There is actually that slide right there. If you see the house on the lower right-hand side, you see the line. That's it right where is that your map? Yeah, right up there. There's an existing water main that goes all the way from Hunt Valley, takes the right turn over to Echo Valley. That's an existing 8-inch line. We're tapping somewhere into that location. And the exact location of where that's happened will most likely be determined by us.
And so I guess that other, on the other side, I saw the flushing station that's related to the sewer. The one that we put in there. And is that just a manhole cover?
It's not even that big. It's very small. You gotta, this is not an 8-inch gravity sewer line. These are low pressure sanitary sewers that are in, you know, like it starts at 1.5 inches and goes to 3 before you come up. It's a very small pipe.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Good evening, Rick Jankowski, 184 Hunt Valley Circle. Could you go to slide number 12, please? And could you kind of zoom in on this lower area, if that's all right? So this is my place here. Mr. Porter has had a chance to come out before, so we're well under 400 here, right? And the high point up there is 420, 422. When we get any sort of good rain, I think most of that, I kind of described how some of the water comes down that way. Can you describe to me, sir, what discharge point 002 means?
It's not a discharge point because I don't believe there's any discharge point over there. That's a designation that we have to use when we have areas. You might like to look at.
Sure, yeah, yeah. Because I understand there's a.
Oh, I understand. I'm sorry.
So there's a berm, right? Okay, so I guess let's start with that, right? So this is very low, and this pipe is taking the water to that retention basin, which is much higher, right? That's around 380 and down low. This is a little bit lower than that. So there's going to be a pipe that's going to get the water up that hill.
No, actually, what it is that we're gonna put an inlet out there and the pipe itself will have downward flow from the inlet into that basin. I know it looks, so what's gonna happen is that at one point that pipe's gonna be very deep because as you said, it is higher.
Right.
But you know, it has slow people up there.
Okay.
And to answer your original question, that discharge point number 02 was pre-condition. So that's where all the water goes before the development. And we have to show that in.
I appreciate that clarification. That makes it feel a little better. Can you describe the berm that you plan on being on the other side? I think Mr. Porter described it as something very similar to what the White Horse development has. Can you describe that berm on the back side here? Like I'll say 13, lot 13, 12, 11, like kind of going that way with that.
Yeah, that's exactly. It's probably gonna have something like a 10-foot base.
Okay.
And probably anywhere from 3 to 4 foot high.
Okay.
I don't believe at this point we're recommending putting any landscaping on there yet. We're not necessarily required, but that will, as we discussed, that will be a conversation with the township officers.
Okay. All right, yeah, that would be, you know, if I could make a request or a recommendation that we look to landscape that berm very similar to how nice the White Horse development is with really nice mature trees and bushes and such. Yeah, that would be a nice touch. Thank you for your time, folks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Name hasn't changed, I live at the same place. This firm has a lot of interest for us, and I forgot to ask just a couple questions about it. The pipe that takes the water to the basins runs the entire length of the firm, am I correct?
No, actually it doesn't. Because there's a high point in the middle, we actually have, it's gonna be a swale at one portion of it that's gonna drain to an inlet, and then that will then, as it was pointed out before, so think of it this way. It's gonna come down like this, the berm's gonna be over, the basin's gonna be over here, the berm's gonna be in the middle. It's almost gonna drain like this for a portion of it, drop into the pipe, and then it was.
The pipe's gonna be on which side of the berm?
On the developable property side, not on your side. You're gonna have the berm there, and then right in front of it on the developed property side will be the inlet.
Could I ask you just show us, if you don't mind? Something we'll have to. Sure. Let's come up, this report for someone. And then, that's 6 by 8 about.
Where is the pipe running?
The pipe is running, here's the low point of the pipe right there.
All right.
And this berm is gonna take the water that comes here and goes into this inlet. And at one point, there's a high point from here to here where the water's gonna run down to this inlet. And then the inlet's gonna take the piped water and take it all the way over.
So at that dock. And it's there, and then on the other side,
Gravity, the berm begins here. Gravity to this. And it's pipe here. And there's also gravity over that. Problem is, this is a low point. Looks like this. So we had to create on the low point, we collected the structure that collects the water, then we piped it directly from there to there. You know, why not the other berm? The other ones is easy, we got gravity, we give all the way there. It's only a bushes.
Kathy Misko, 145 Hunt Valley Circle. You can leave that slide up. On lot 18, they're only going to have the option to have their driveway open to Wayland, right? That can't be changed.
Well, no, I'm not saying that can't be changed, but that's the plan simply because it would be too difficult to try to get permits to go through the way.
Meaning that the driveway
Yes.
all right. And what does discharge point here mean? Because there's already so much water at this intersection.
That's what it means. It's a low point, it's a discharge. It's a natural low point. So when we evaluate stuff, when we evaluate a drainage area, we have to assume, we have to go to the low point and we have to call it a discharge point. That's where all the water comes from. But, you know, whether we develop or not,
It's not any different than it's new.
So just to clarify for everybody's benefit, that these discharge points are nothing more than a pre-post analysis point. So you're analyzing in the pre-developed condition and then comparing that to the post-developed condition. And you're just indicating to the DEP that this is the point that we're taking that analysis at.
Okay. And this house kind of sits separate from this nice little street up there. So are there sidewalks connecting them or they just kind of sit out like an outlier?
we were not extending sidewalk down to there.
There's no sidewalks on the Wayland side.
No.
And what happens here? Because right now, this lot is a mess. And every time there's a storm, there's branches come down and block the lane. So is this going to be cleaned up?
Well, the problem with cleaning up is if it's an existing DEP or existing wetland, DEP doesn't really like us to touch it.
A lot of it's dead.
I understand that, but you know, sometimes they think that's a natural occurrence.
Right. But that's is that their property or not?
Yes, it
It's
is.
going to be it's going to be that lot's
Yes.
property.
Yes.
Right, okay. All right, and then lastly, I guess every lot has like a building envelope and you've got, you know, some examples of some driveways. So what happens when someone says, and I've seen this on in that other whiteboards development, that they want to put in like the party house at the back with pool landscaping and affect this 1.5 acre lot and all this very carefully crafted runoff that they then disturb with non-permeable whatever. So how, like, what restrictions will those lots be held to when they want to build other stuff?
So whatever is proposed on this land development plan, they have to design stormwater management to handle the runoff and the volume and the rate of runoff generated by this project. If anybody comes in to do anything additional to that, they have to get a grading permit from the township and they have to do additional stormwater management. They exceed a certain threshold of additional impervious coverage.
Okay.
So it is further regulated. And I believe the way that the stormwater management calculations are geared, at least in this revision from what I've seen, is there is additional built into the stormwater management design for this to handle beyond what the proposed house square footage is and beyond what the proposed driveway square footage is. And I'm presuming, based on what I heard Mr. Gade mention earlier, that the driveways are configured either with a loop or a single connection point. And the homeowners are going to have an option which one to decide on when they come in and purchase the lot and build their house. So that additional stormwater management should cover the flexibility to allow them to do that.
And have those stormwater management restrictions, I mean, have been pretty much static for the past, I don't know, 10, 20 years? I mean, like what you're holding people to today is the same as it was 5 years ago, 10 years ago. Are we getting more restrictive? It just seems like there's no land left, right?
Right.
So, I mean, and it's not getting drier.
Right. So actually, coincidentally, there was the DEP just had a workshop today on a revision to what they call a best management practice stormwater management manual. It's a statewide manual. They're now calling it a stormwater control measure manual, but they are proposing changes in calculations to model more high intensity, more frequent, shorter duration rainfall events, similar to what we've been seeing here.
But it would
So
take some time.
it would take some time, yes. But the stormwater management ordinances that are in place right now, they're not static. I think the last one was adopted in 2014-ish, 2013 or 2014. I'm not sure if the township has adopted a new one or is looking to adopt a new one. Chester County was required to do it. All the other municipalities that our office represents in Chester County have adopted those as of like the end of 2022. So they are a little bit more restrictive than the prior, but it's very similar to the stormwater ordinance requirements in 2014.
Okay, thank you.
And I'm gonna correct something before the date question. We did propose sidewalk along
Yes.
the way down. We do.
You will have a sign. Only on that section?
No, the whole length of the property, that was, actually, that was required by the.
Yeah, we've been trying to get sidewalks put in as new developments move forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dave, did DEP indicate when they want to enact the new regulations?
The MP manual revisions are under public comment right now. I believe comments are due in April of this year. So until they receive all public comments and address them, it's probably going to take some time before they roll that into the new manual and then obviously put that out for advertisement before it's officially.
Okay, so not next week.
Not next week.
All right.
Okay. Anyone else?
Cindy Mahalo, 87 Hunters Run, EAC Vice Chair. I found the woman's comments just now very interesting and the discussion about the changes to the stormwater management best practices manual and the updates to the ordinance, because one of the things I wanted to ask about was the stormwater management. It obviously is a big topic of conversation here, and you've assured previous people that the system is designed to handle the storms. You've got the swales, the pipes, detention basins. Could you share with us what year storm is that? are these systems designed for? Is it a 2-year storm, a 10-year storm?
All systems are designed for two, actually from the 1 to the 100 years. Requirement by both township and by the,
For the 1 or 100?
all the way through.
Okay,
We design for the 1 year. We design for the 2 years. We design all the way up to the 100 years. To ensure that no additional water, or we don't increase any water coming. In some cases, we reduce the amount of water. That is a requirement.
Yeah, so the stormwater management ordinance that's in place right now actually requires them to knock down the rate of runoff. So typically you would compare a pre-developed storm, a 1-year storm, to a post-developed 1-year storm. And then look at the 2 to the 2, but what this ordinance requires them to do is to take the post-developed 2-year rate of runoff and lower it to below the 1-year rate of pre-developed. So it's really knocking that rate of discharge down. And I think the 50 and 100 are like storms, if I recall correctly. So the 50 and 100 would, you have to, lower to below that pre-developed for each one of those.
okay, thank you. And I know when you make those calculations, you base them on models that use data from historical storms. And as the woman before me mentioned, and you mentioned, the storms are getting more high intensity and shorter duration. So what rainfall models were used in these calculations?
The typical type 2 distribution,
NRCS,
But I mean, what date? Because I know different states have, some states are more proactive in updating the rainfall models that they're using when they do their calculations. And given the rate that our storms are changing and our weather patterns are changing, I wondered what is the rainfall model that you're
right?
using?
So the current township ordinance, I believe, refers to the NOAA Atlas 14 rainfall. And that data is as of, I think, 2016 is the last time that NOAA has updated that data. So it's current through that date. The design parameters that are in place right now for stormwater management using what's called the NRCS, Natural Soil Conservation Service runoff method. There's a technical release manual that's been in place for a number of years. It's TR 55 that uses soil cover runoff coefficients, and that takes into account for the type 2 distribution storm, which is our area of the country. That takes into account the 24-year storm and then creates a hydrograph for when that storm starts from 0 rate of runoff, and then counts for the time where it peaks based on the time of duration for that storm, and then has a trailing leg to where it tapers off to 0 again. And what's captured in that is the volume of that hydrograph is what has to be managed in post back to pre-developed condition. The peak in that is what you have to look at that time of duration, that you have to meet and reduce the rate of runoff to below that peak. Essentially at that time that peak occurs during that storm. The modeling and the safety factors that are built into the guidance documents that we use to design right now are very conservative, and we're using factors of safety for infiltration rates of 2 based on the methods of infiltration testing that are permitted by DEP. The workshop that I was a part of today, they're indicating that using newer data and the type of storm data and modeling for the storms moving forward is going to be on a continuous run model, not a static rainfall event. So they're really going to look at a drainage basin, not a historic point in time for the amount of rainfall in that return period. So what that's going to do, and they're actually going to knock down the safety factors that are included and have us model based on a percent confidence level. So it's going to increase the amount of rainfall that we're looking to model, but it's going to decrease the size of the basins theoretically that we have to construct in order to manage the stormwater. There's kind of a trade-off. So long story short, what we're designing to today, that's why you see a lot of basins that are pretty large and they rarely fill up storm events. What the DEP is hoping is we're gonna capture the appropriate amount of volume and use different methodologies for controlling the rate of runoff, which will allow us to kind of reduce the size of those stormwater facilities.
Okay, thank you. I had a couple questions on the swales. And if you could explain, I believe I noticed that it was either the swales or the detention basins where you're proposing to use vegetative, like native vegetation in those green infrastructure features, or are they going to be turf grass?
The swales themselves are most likely turf grass, but they have to deal with. We have, and this was part of the original approval, we said that we were going to allow to put native vegetation at the bottom.
Could you explain that more of what native vegetation that would be and what the maintenance would be? Because it's critical for them to function well, for the vegetation to be properly maintained. And if the HOA is taking over responsibility for this, then I would hope that they're managing it properly.
I will tell you, I'm not alone. I could not get into detail. I do know that there is a list, I believe, the township together that they have decided is appropriate for this type of thing. With the vegetation and the fact that this is a stormwater basin that has to be maintained, there's a long list of requirements on maintenance for the vegetation and the drainage structures that get all part of the.
Okay, and how long is the operation and maintenance clause for those stormwater detention basins? Because I know that after a certain point in time, they can fill up, they stop functioning well, and the people who live in Echo Valley in a decade or two could be subject to overflow that's coming out of those basins if they're not properly maintained.
The HOA agreement is for the purpose. Because there's a basin, the HOA has to. And there, like I said, there are strict, clean it every 6 months, after every event, there's a whole long list of things they have to do. Current stormwater management manual has put together to prevent basic failure.
And there's an operation and maintenance agreement that the developer will have to enter into with the township for yearly inspections.
Okay, and it's my understanding that the site developer often provides funding to the township that helps pay for those stormwater management inspections to make sure that the O&M is happening, and that after a certain point in time when that funding has dissipated or gone, then the township inspections actually don't happen as often.
I don't know the specifics to that. I do know that there's an operation and maintenance agreement that has to be entered into before any permits are issued. That has to be signed off by the township engineer and the township.
Yeah, I'm not questioning that. I appreciate you explaining that. I'm just wondering about the actuality of the inspections happening after that.
I don't know that I can
Yeah.
speak to that.
Okay, thank you. In talking about water, you can also not talk about trees. I'd like to talk about lot 18 at this point. This was a feature that we brought up in the EAC letter. I think that the proposal to develop a house on that lot is very problematic from a number of perspectives. If you've gone out and looked at that lot, you can see that it is heavily wooded of trees of all different sizes. And if you could go to slide 24, which is the landscape plan, and then zoom in on that, you'll see what the existing conditions are and the number of trees that are proposed to be removed. This home, as you explained, was not in the original plan when the applicant came before the planning board last June and asked for 13 homes and asked for a waiver. You said that at the time you asked for and received 4 waivers, a waiver in the length. You had previously received a waiver allowing 1 point of egress, whereas normally 2 are required, but the township waived that. So they waived that, they waived the length restriction. You said they also waived the maximum number of lots, and they waived the PVC pipes, which I understand is fairly common. So a number of waivers were granted, and now the applicant is coming back and asking for a higher density, many more homes, and also the addition of this development of lot 18. The existing conditions of lot 18 is that there are wetlands there, it's heavily wooded, and there are streams, there's a perennial stream flowing through there. That means that this lot is headwaters. Headwaters, as you know, Dave, because you're a very knowledgeable engineer, headwaters are just about the most sensitive point in a watershed. They are under-acknowledged, underappreciated because the streams are so small. They don't seem significant, but this is very sensitive land because this is where you get maximum infiltration. And as one of the residents pointed out, that's already a very low spot. There's a lot of water there. If you look at the stream there, you can already see evidence of erosion. The stream bank is cut away. So the proposal, I don't know if you can see it, but there are, I think, 21 little circles on this lot, which are all circles with X's in them. They are all existing trees over the inch of 20, over the size of 20 inches diameter breast height, which is this size tree, to be removed for that home to be developed. The majority of those trees that are proposed to be removed are in the exact location of where they're proposing to clear cut these trees and then put in a rain garden or a stormwater feature just for this property. To me, that seems really counterintuitive, that trees are about the most effective way to control stormwater runoff that you can imagine. And in addition to that, they provide innumerable ecosystem services. They cool the air, they clean the air, they remove toxins from the soil, they contribute to cleaner air, oxygen, native vegetation, they support biodiversity. So it would be a significant loss to clear cut this lot. As you can see, just about every significant tree that's on that lot would be cut. And not only that, but there are a number of small trees that aren't shown there that are less than 20 inches DBH. So it's the EAC's position that this lot is too valuable to submit to destruction, basically. You'd be clear cutting it, removing the trees, and then try to recreate using best scientific knowledge available to capture the stormwater, but you will never replace the trees that you've cut down. If you could pull up the EAC letter.
And if I could interrupt you real quick, because this is a preliminary presentation. And you kind of wrap it up in about 5.
Yep. Yep.
Thank you.
Yep. So if you go to page 2, there's a table, and it just is a list of the 21 trees that are proposed to be removed. The oldest tree is estimated to be over 200 years old, and that tree alone can absorb 40,000 or transpire 40,000 gallons of water a year. So this is the impact that clear cutting that lot would have. So that was one of our major requests, is that this lot not be developed. Our second proposal is to get a little creative in helping the applicant meet the tree replacement requirement. I know you've said you've tried to put in as many trees as you can, and the trees on slide 24, which is the landscaping plan, show that the trees are placed as street trees along Wayland and then the road in. Again, if you visited the lot or you look at the existing conditions slide, you can see that the majority of the land there is farmland. So there really are no trees there. And then you get into the stormwater basins in the back. What we'd like to propose is that the applicant fulfill the requirement of replacement trees by planting those trees on site. If you look at slide 24, you can see that the two stormwater detention basins by lots 9 and 10 are, as someone had indicated earlier, on steep slopes. Steep slopes are also very important when you're trying to control stormwater management. Those slopes shunt the water down towards Echo Valley. So we're proposing that the applicant find places on site to plant those trees, clustering them around the stormwater detention basins, perhaps in the back of the property. It seems like a win-win for the homeowners there to have more shade on their property, and for the neighbors, and also for the township. The township is trying to comply with its MS4 requirements, which are going to cost taxpayers over $1.4 million. And I think the applicant, as every homeowner, can do their best to help that. And by planting trees there, that would also help the effectiveness of the stormwater detention basins. And it would also help protect the runoff from those steep slopes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jim Martin, 2407 Wayland in Easttown. I'd like to follow up on a question from my neighbor, the Francises, on the with respect to the timing. I understand that you can't predict the market, but is the strategy for selling the homes one by one, custom as they're purchased, they'll be built? Is that the intent?
I believe that these are high level homes.
Right, so no, it's not a spec build. Okay. Okay, and then with respect to the berms, can you talk a little bit more about the berms, and do they exist on the plans anywhere along Wayland Road? Yeah, on the landscape plan? And they describe them physically again. You said they're similar to the White Horse development berms, and those are only 10 feet wide and 3 to 4 feet high.
They go to 15 feet wide. I don't know the exact. It's supposed to be down with a 10 to 15 wide, 4 foot high, and then replace the tree down wherever the arborist wants to place the trees, whether they're in a row or offset or staggered.
Okay, okay, so there will be some, I guess, slight setback off the road. The berm will begin 15, and then it'll, whatever the remaining setback of the 60 feet remaining to the home. Because it's a 60-foot setback for the home to the road, is that correct?
No, it's 40-foot setback from the house to the right of it. And the right of way is another 20, 15, 17 feet, something like that.
Okay,
Between the right of way and the exit.
okay, okay, perfect, thank you.
Jim,
And
I
then,
just wanted to clarify that you have 75-foot.
Oh,
From-
that's right.
from Wayland to the-
That's a double fronted plot.
Yes,
Okay, that's correct. They're 75 feet from the house. So
there's a little addition right there.
okay, okay, thank you. And then the final question, have there been any traffic studies done with respect to what this would do for the traffic on the road?
Yeah.
Is there a plan to, is there a requirement ordinarily for that?
I think the threshold is like 35 or 36 lots, which would trigger a traffic study
Okay,
for development.
okay, all right, thank you, those are
Thank
my
you.
questions.
Thank you.
We'll wrap it up after this.
Misco 145 Hunt Valley Circle. So along this road, like all those telephone poles, do they go underground, or do we leave all that?
we're not touching any of the others.
No, but the utilities on the
Will
link,
be underground.
they'll be underground, but none of this will, right? And this might be a little bit off topic, but is it still in play that the land on the other side of the Nolan Horse Farm off of White Horse is also approved for development? No, okay. Thought I saw that on a few years back. Okay, and then I guess lastly, depending on how the outcome of lot 18 and I guess the plan before this was 13 houses. Is it reasonable to say that had it not been approved for the increase to 17 or 18, that you wouldn't have gone forward with the development because it wouldn't be cost effective? It's so expensive to develop the land, that 13 houses on that piece of land and all the involvement. I know that as the engineer, you can't really say that's not your call, but there, I just wonder, like, what was the deal breaker? You know, and
I don't know if there was a deal breaker, but I do know over the last 2 years with the cost of infrastructure and
materials.
and then the addition of the water main down kind of.
Right, right. Thank you.
Thank you. Comments, members?
No.
Can you make it quick? Because that was the last one.
Just wondering why the township approved the increase of the lots from 13 to 18.
This isn't approved yet. They're just coming in and asking.
Okay, so you'll consider the other request not to build on 18.
Well, they have approved, they have essentially approval for 13. They've now come in for something different, and so we basically start the process again.
Okay, will there be hearings on that to go from 13 to 18?
Yep, there'll be more here, and then they'll have to eventually go to the supervisor.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any more comments from the applicant?
Hi, Sue Disman, 125 Hunt Valley. I just have a question about lot 18. Have you all gone and looked at this piece of property? Anybody?
I have not, but I will.
Because I'm having a hard time envisioning a house there. It's a very busy corner, a lot of traffic. I don't know where the driveway, I can't envision this. And there's a lot of the. Like I pointed out, there's a lot of wildlife and trees, but a lot of wildlife, especially I noticed during COVID when traffic had settled down. There was some wonderful wildlife that lives there. Giant box turtle lives in that creek. I just think that would be a problematic lot. And I encourage you to go look at it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
There is one thing, I realize that we're not gonna get a recommendation on the plan today, but there is a sewage planning module component 4A that.
Yes, there's all the check boxes and all the questions, and I'm not an engineer. So I've requested that someone from the township that is an engineer fill it out,
Okay,
saying that we're complying, and I'll sign it.
and send it over.
I'll sign it and leave it at the township, and
Okay, that's right. The only reason why is because there's one of like 15 different signatures that I can't even get moving on the planning module until I start getting some of these.
right, I mean, I'll come in on Monday if they get it filled out
That'd
for
be
them.
perfect.
That's
And you have to go out there, but I appreciate the.
Yeah, it's.
Yep.
I'm an appraiser. That's not my expertise.
Understood.
For what it's worth, for the plan commission's benefit, the component 4A essentially just speaks to the township's zoning and land use ordinances, as well as the Act 537 consistency. It's essentially no different than the prior 13 lot subdivision, other than having the 5 additional lots. So as far as consistency with the other ordinances, obviously the planning commission, the subdivision land development is pending, but overall it will be consistent. The zoning will be consistent. The Act 537 is what they're working through right now as part of the sewage planning process, because it's not in a public sewer service area, hence the planning module. So I can certainly get that turned around for you, and I'll let you know when it's available for your signature.
Okay, great. Thank you. Well, thank you. Thanks for coming in. Anything else? Do we have a motion to close?
With the citizens forum here, do we have to go through citizen forum?
Yep.
Or
Business?
what? We don't have new business.
I just apologize for putting you through this. As you know, I have a 27 lot approved, fully approved township
Cluster.
supervisors,
Right, you know.
fully approved. And I felt I was hurting the neighborhood, so I cut it down to 13. And Carl King came in and wanted me to put a half a mile water line in. So I had to call my position. I apologize.
Why we get the big bucks? We're good.
No, we did not.
No, okay.
We want to
Do you
adjourn.
motion to close?
I'll look to adjourn.
I adjourned.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.